Good afternoon, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf. It feels like an absurdly long time since I last did a booktube video, and it actually hasn't been as long as it's been on previous occasions, but I think it's because almost every day I have been planning to do one, and it's just been very, very difficult to sit down and actually film. The reasons behind that are going to be abundantly obvious from the topic of this video. So back in January, I think last time I was making a video about some books that I'd read, I mentioned that I've read a huge number of books about babies and parenting and pregnancy and all of that all that jazz. And a couple of people did say that they would be interested in hearing some opinions on those books. And I think possibly there are other people out there who might not normally be familiar with this booktube corner of the internet in which we all chat about and review books. That's what we normally do here, but might find their way here for other reasons in terms of being interested in preparing for a baby. I've given recommendations on pregnancy and baby books very liberally over the last year or so to other parents-to-be in my orbit. So, you know, now's the time that I decide that I'm qualified to share that information on the internet, because that's what parents do, apparently. Give unsolicited advice to other future parents? Not sure. But I'm hopeful that my opinions on some of these books will help you if you're deciding between reading a couple. And if you're not interested at all in reading them for yourself, maybe you'll just stay for the ride. So I'm going to rank this video. I'm going to focus exclusively on pregnancy guides, because this is probably the first type of book that you're going to encounter if you're just entering into the world of parenting books. You're probably going to be starting with a pregnancy guide. I'm going to be ranking the 5 that I've read from the worst to the best, as in the one that I would most recommend. And yeah, pretty much we'll take it from there. What I would say is this category is the most samey. Like, future categories, we're going to talk about maybe 4th trimester, baby sleep, baby weaning. In some of those, there's kind of bigger philosophical differences, bigger approach differences on how the books are written and what they're recommending, the kind of like the advice that they cover. Guides to pregnancy are a little bit more formulaic, like, there's a route that they take. In particular, 3 of these books were written by NHS midwives. This video will definitely focus on the UK context. And those books are kind of structured around the appointments that you are likely to get as a childbearing person in the UK. And the kind of cluster the advice around those, and in a sense they're just a more detailed version of your midwife's appointment, like what would happen if you asked every single possible question at your midwife's appointment. That's what you get from these books. I turned to these books. I wasn't initially planning to read a lot of pregnancy and baby books, but when I had my midwife's appointments, I sometimes found that they were, although the midwives were great, really nice people, but they sometimes didn't seem to go into things in as much depth as I wanted. And I've always been somebody who uses books to understand everything that's going on in the world around me. So it just made sense for me to head to the library and get a few books. Okay, that's enough of an introduction. Let me get started on the books. So the first is probably the most obvious. It was the first baby pregnancy guide that I ever heard of, and that is What to Expect When You're Expecting. If you're thinking this looks very retro, it's because it's a very old edition. It's from 2002, and I think this was one of the first mainstream pregnancy guides that came available in like the 1980s. There's better choices out there now, I would say. I don't know what a brand new edition of this would be like. I got this in a charity bookshop when I was a student, just because I needed to understand a little bit about pregnancy at that time, and I thought this would be a good way to do it. It's incredibly dense. It's got a lot of information about things that you should not do, and it's all very well meant, but it's not very inspiring. It's quite difficult, really. It's not what you want to be doing with your life when you're pregnant. You could, you could weightlift with this maybe, but I don't recommend reading it. So that is by, sorry, I should have said Heidi E. Murkoff, Arlene, Eisenberg, and Sandee E. Hathaway. And What to Expect itself has become a kind of like an entire brand. It's got a website. You can use it to find like different recommendations for things. So it might be that you'll interact with this kind of what to expect world, but I don't recommend the book itself. Next on the list is the first of these books by NHS midwives that I mentioned, and that is How to Grow a Baby and Push It Out by Clemmie Hooper. This is a lovely book. It's gorgeous. It's got a really nice picture on the front. This book was kind of like my favourite appearance-wise. It's really nicely laid out. I really like the little borders on the pages. And it's got a couple of things like nice touches, like nice little recipes that she recommends for like dealing with morning sickness or for like batch cooking later in pregnancy. It's got some parent experiences, and it's got like collaborations with other experts. All of these NHS midwife books, I think they gained their position by having big social media followings and having built that level of social media following, and then went on to write the book. I liked these books, all three of them that I'm going to mention, because I felt like coming from a midwife, I knew that they were coming from somebody who had studied the topic very thoroughly. They're all people who've also been through the process of having children, but they come from an expert side, and the midwife side, it tends to be focused on, it's supposed to be more mum-centric, I suppose, or focused on the pregnant person, as opposed to just the medicalised view. But I knew that they would all be more or less evidence-based, and yeah, like trustworthy, I suppose, because you know these people really are registered midwives, and this is their professional reputation as well. So yeah, it's nice. If this appeals to you, if you want something that's going to be like easy to read due to being so pretty, then I would go for this one. I did find it the easiest to read because it's just, yeah, it's kind of cute. The one thing that it does, and you get this all the time when you're pregnant, is it tells you how big your baby is compared to vegetables. I just didn't get it. Didn't do it for me. Didn't see the point. Actually kind of annoyed me quite a lot. But, if you like that, some people think it's cute. Next on the list, actually I think this book is really good, and there's not much to choose between the kind of like the top ranks of this. And this is The Modern Midwife's Guide to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond by Louise. And again, Louise is a registered midwife in the UK, and kind of became successful on social media and created the book to go with it. The reason that this is better for me than Clemmie Hooper is there is a lot more in it. I know I said that was a bad thing with What to Expect, but there's a lot more in it, but it's written in a very accessible way, and it feels a little bit more inclusive. I would say the Clemmie Hooper, I don't know her, I mean no offence to her, and like I come from myself being this kind of background, but it felt quite middle class and quite like one typical kind of lifestyle I felt was mostly represented by that book. I feel like this book is maybe a little bit more open, and the last one that I'm going to mention did feel even more inclusive. It's quite sweet. All of them do have a section at the end about like becoming mum. She's got the recovery phase and what's called the fourth trimester, so the phase after you've given birth when the baby is still completely dependent on the person who's given birth to it, so this one, it's just got a little bit more detail. I found it quite calming. I listened to it as an audiobook, but it does have like some little diagrams and things, and because it's got a little bit more information in it, she's just able to cover a little bit more in terms of different approaches to pain relief, different ways to manage sort of the immediate aftermath of the birth in terms of things like the birth crawl and stuff. So I felt like there was more variety in this. Next one is probably the biggest wild card. I've got to be honest, this is my favourite, but I don't think that it can be the one that I recommend the most. So that is Bump by Kate Evans, How to Make, Grow and Birth a Baby. And this is a fantastically gorgeous book that is just so inspiring and wonderful. And it's a cartoon book, really. It's got text in as well, but everything is punctuated by these amazing, beautiful cartoons that really help to keep your attention and sort of engage your interest. I read this a very long time ago. I read it before I was pregnant, and it was the first book that I'd read that looks at things in a more holistic way, a more potentially natural way, I suppose. She does talk about cesarean and hospital birth and everything of that category, but she also goes through the idea of kind of like a birth without intervention. That was something that when I first read it really resonated with me. It helped me to understand the different spectrums, I suppose, different spectrums of births that are out there, and things that I might want to incorporate or aim for in my own pregnancy experience. That said, it is potentially more leaning towards one side. Kate Evans is known for being kind of like an attachment parent, a promoter of attachment parenting, which the downside of attachment parenting is it can put a lot of pressure on typically mothers. I really, really like this book, but the other thing that I would say to note is that Kate Evans is a journalist and a cartoonist. She's not necessarily an expert. This is a really well-researched book. I wasn't like going through it and saying, that's wrong, because I'm not an expert either, but I would say I had more confidence in the books that were written by midwives, even though they were maybe less enjoyable to read. I would say if I'm recommending books to people, I say read this one, but read a different one as well, so that you get the balance. But this one is also just going to make you laugh. I'm trying to find my favourite page, okay? I, the divine being, bestow upon you, woman, the greatest gift of all. You shall bring forth new life from your loins. With you resides the ultimate power, the miracle of creation, the very future of the human race. And you can also have heartburn, nausea, varicose veins, and hemorrhoids, just so you don't get uppity. It's that kind of sense of humour that makes this book very accessible and enjoyable to read. Finally then is the only one that I don't have to hold up because somebody else had it out of the library when I came to be preparing for this video, and that's a good thing because I'm glad that somebody else is reading it. And that is Midwife Marley's Guide for Everyone by Marley Hall. That's the most recent of all of them as well. That one came out in 2022. This one is, I think, 2014. This one's 2020. This one 2017 maybe, like just going a bit back in time I suppose. Not far, but obviously things are constantly being updated. I felt like Midwife Marley's Guide was the most accessible. It was much like the Clemmie Hooper, it was laid out in a really clear, easy to read way. There wasn't too much information, but there was enough information. She went into detail in some areas that it's surprising that some of the others didn't. Like she was the only one to write about like what an APGAR score actually is. That's like what the medical team is looking for when looking for in the baby when the baby is first born, or what the midwives, doctors, what they want to see. She was the only one that bothered to kind of explain that, which you would think would be like a standard thing. So I liked that. She also uses some cartoons. They're not cartoons like Kate Evans' cartoons, but just little illustrations of people and characters who crop up as they go through the stages of pregnancy. And I felt like her summary of things to expect from the fourth trimester was probably the best out of all of them. No book can really tell you what to expect, but I felt like I got more from her attempt than some of the others. Hers was the one book that I gave to my husband to read. So obviously he's not a big reader in the same way that I am, but we both wanted to sort of understand and be on the same page about things. I wasn't going to make him read 5 books, but yeah, I just picked that one as being the one that I felt summarised everything, was presented in a good way, was clear, was aligned well with what we both wanted, and yeah, I think that in itself is the recommendation that speaks for itself, like that it was the one that felt best for that. I think I'm starting to ramble, and I have reached all through all of my 5 books, and somehow managed to do it without any background crying noise. So we're winning at the moment. If you found this interesting, let me know. Let me know what other topics you would like to know about. Like I said, I've got books on weaning, sleep, the fourth trimester, the actual birth process itself, and like more focus. So all of these cover a little bit about birth, well, sometimes quite a lot about birth, but there were whole books that are just just kind of more focused on birth, and other things that are more kind of like memoir-y, motherhood experience journey type books. So if any of those are interesting to you, pop it in the comments. If you want me to shut up about this kind of thing and just go back to talking about classics and fantasy, again, also let me know. I feel like if that's the case, you probably haven't watched the whole video, but who knows? Yeah, take care. Thank you for watching. Apologies for the rambliness, but I think we've done all right. We'll see. Thanks. Bye.